I've been asked to address when the Old Testament ends and the New Testament begins, and along the way, in particular, critique the AD 70 theology on that particular topic. The traditional view in Churches of Christ is that the Old Testament ended before the New Testament began, and this is the biblical teaching. And for much more on this and related matters, again, I refer, as the other speakers did, to the lectureship. What I'd like to do is to focus on some passages in critique of the AD 70 viewpoint just on this topic. Namely, when did the Old Testament end and the New Testament begin? Now note that the AD 70 theology is a massive system which makes claims about this particular subtopic and others, and holds, for example, that the final coming of Christ, the end of the world, the resurrection of the dead, the day of judgment, as examples, took place when the Romans destroyed Jerusalem and its temple in AD 70. And now some brethren, when they hear this, they kind of just maybe cite a few verses and then go on. As a matter of fact, I mentioned this to a sister in Christ who was a novice, and after she heard this and was disbelieving it, she said, "That's weird." Now, note, too, however, that a few churches have split over this, and families within churches have split, and so then it's something that we do want to focus upon and see what the scriptures have to say about it. So, to begin with, what does that belief system claim about the question, when did the Old Testament end and the New Testament begin? Spokesman Timothy R. King, who is the youngest son of Max King, who in turn was the prime mover of this theology in Churches of Christ in the 1970s. He writes this, quote, "The Old Covenant is in the process of going out, and the New Covenant is in the process of being completely established or coming to maturity. Now," he continues, "now, surprisingly, there is a 40-year coexistence of these two covenants." End of quote. Now, he provides a graphic that you see on the screen in front of you. So he has the Old Testament incrementally going away, beginning at the cross, and finally abrogated fully in AD 70 at the fall of Jerusalem. Notice, too, that he has the New Testament incrementally coming into being, beginning at the cross, and finally fully in effect at AD 70. And so then he has some of the Old Testament and some of the New Testament in force at the same time. This is consistent with his father's view, Max King. Max King had written several years ago of the overlapping period of these two ages or dispensations. And in another location, Max King wrote of the coexistence of the two ions. But other AD adherents claim that the New Testament gradually comes into existence from Pentecost to AD 70, not from the cross, but either way, the AD 70 devotees have the Old Testament and the New Testament coexisting for 40 years, from AD 70 approximately, AD 30 approximately, to AD 70. Now, some relevant passages to consider in critique of this AD dual covenant claim. Due to space constraints, I will examine 3 passages, time permitting. We'll see how that goes. But I'd like for us to concentrate especially on Matthew 5, verse 18. The 3 passages that I have in mind at this hour are Matthew 5, 17 to 18, Hebrews 10, 9 to 10, and then Romans chapter 7, verses 1 to 4. So then, Matthew 5, 18. And I'm going to make the decision, I'm going to slow down and focus on this. And if I do not have time to address the others, namely Hebrews 10, 9 to 10, and Romans 7, 1 to 4, I'm not going to do that, we'll see. But Brian tells me that we can spend a little more time maybe during the Q&A on some of these. So Matthew 5, 17 to 18, this passage is part of the Sermon on the Mount. that begins in chapter 5 of the book of Matthew, goes into chapter 6, and then ends in chapter 7, where Jesus is contrasting his New Testament with the Old Testament. Matthew 5, 17 to 18 is sandwiched between the Beatitudes, verses 1 to 12 of Matthew 5. You are the salt of the earth, and you are the light of the world teachings before it. And you have heard that it was said to those of old, but I say to you, contrasts after it. Matthew 5, 17 to 18. Do not think that I came to destroy the law of the prophets. I did not come to destroy, but to fulfill. Especially verse 18. For assuredly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Unquote. Verse 18 is of particular interest in this study. For ease of reference, I divide this verse into 3 sections. Section A, for assuredly I say to you. Section B, till heaven and earth pass away. And section C, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. Matthew 5:18c is the focus. This particular section of Matthew 5:18 leaves no room for the Old Testament and the New Testament to be enforced at the same time. Section C denies the AD 70 view that the Old Testament and the New Testament were simultaneous for 40 years, between Pentecost in AD, or between AD 70, or between the cross in AD 70, either way. A close examination of 518c shows that it does teach conclusively that the Old Testament and New Testament cannot have been enforced simultaneously. It itself allows no leeway for the Old Testament's incrementally going out while simultaneously the New Testament is coming in. Rather, it is consistent with our traditional teaching that the Old Testament ended before the New Testament began. Again, the passage says that one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. To begin with, the AD 70 adherents agree, at least in my experience with them, that the law here includes the Old Testament, the Mosaic covenant. So then, this is not in dispute. What does Jesus mean then by one jot or one tittle? The Old Testament scriptures were written in the Hebrew language and a few in Aramaic. The jot is otherwise known as the yod, and this is the smallest letter in the Hebrew language. It looks somewhat like a comma above the line. A tittle, sometimes called a serif, is a small piece of letter that extends out. To see what a tittle looks like in Hebrew letters, compare the Hebrew letter resh, which has no tittle at its top right, with the dalet, which does. The figure that you're looking at shows the yod, the dalet, and the resh. The tittle on the dalet is only that little part on the top that extends to the right past the verb. Such subtle markings distinguish different Hebrew letters and thus make different words and thus different meanings in Hebrew. Now, what is Jesus saying? He is being very graphic and very clear. By one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law. He is saying that none of the Old Testament will go out of effect till all is fulfilled. All of the Old Testament will remain in effect right up to the time all is fulfilled. So what time in history does till all is fulfilled refer? It can be shown that this refers to those those in churches of Christ have been saying in the traditional view, namely the cross-Pentecost time frame. However, consider the view of the AD 70 theorists on this and see if it works. They say that the expression till all is fulfilled in the verse refers to the fall of Jerusalem in AD 70. They take the all in this expression unqualifiedly, saying it refers to each and every prediction in type in the Old Testament. They hold that every prediction and type in the Old Testament is fulfilled by the time that Jerusalem and its temple fell to the Romans in AD 70. According to them, therefore, there is no Old Testament prediction left to be fulfilled after AD 70. However, to be in harmony with Matthew 5, verse 18c, this has Jesus teaching that one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the Old Testament till AD 70. This is portrayed graphically as shown. If till all is fulfilled refers to AD 70, then Matthew 5, verse 18c teaches that all of the Old Testament remains in effect past the cross, past Pentecost, and continues intact to the fall of Jerusalem and the destruction of its temple. Not one jot, not one single jot or tittle goes away till then. Not one. But this appears to conflict with several Bible passages. Consider these and see if there is indeed a conflict. Colossians 2, verses 14 to 17. Without my reading that, I'll just let you glance at it. Some of you are already familiar with this passage. Colossians 2, 14 through 17 teaches that the Old Testament had been nailed to the cross. Now, whether someone takes cross here literally or as a synecdoche, the cross Pentecost time frame was 40 years before AD 70. Next, Acts chapter 2, verses 38 to 39, teaches that the promise of Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, that all would be blessed through Abraham's seed, fulfilled by Jesus Christ, look at Matthew chapter 1, verse 1, came into effect on the first Pentecost after the cross in Acts chapter 2. And so then, according to this, all Jews and Gentiles were under the New Testament from Pentecost onward. Quote, for the promise is for you and all who are far off, unquote, Acts chapter 2, verse 39. Next, the Great Commission, Matthew 28, 18 to 20, teaches that the gospel, the good news, is for all. As you recall, make disciples of all the nations. And so no one was under the Old Testament from Pentecost onward. All have been under the gospel, the New Testament, since that time. Still further, there is the teaching that the Old Testament had to be done away with before the New Testament could be established, according to Hebrews chapter 10, verse 9. Quote, he takes away the first, that he may establish the second. Unquote. That, hina in Greek, in this passage begins a Greek purpose clause. And so for the purpose of establishing the new covenant, God took away the first covenant. Not so, according to the AD 70 doctrine. So, what do the AD 70 theorists do about this? To try to account for such Bible teachings while holding to the claim that the Old Testament was still in effect up to AD 70, they have the Old Testament incrementally going out of effect, beginning at the cross, and fully going out of effect in AD 70. However, this will not work because Jesus taught that not one jot or tittle, no part of the law, would go out of effect until all of it was fulfilled. Yet, the AD 70 claimants say this did not happen until AD 70. They clearly are in conflict with the Lord here. Now, with their incremental claim, they have jots and tittles of the Old Testament in effect before the time they themselves say that all was fulfilled took place in AD 70. They say this because they know they have to account for the passages mentioned. For example, they realize they have to account for Colossians 2, 14 through 17, which teaches the Old Testament being nailed to the cross 40 years before AD 70, whether one takes cross to be literal or a synecdoche. They hold to an incremental passing away of the Old Testament, even though Jesus taught in Matthew chapter 5, verse 18c, one jot or one tittle will by no means pass from the law till all is fulfilled. If the AD 70 defender were in the first century, he could yell out, to be consistent with his view, no, Jesus, some jots and tittles will pass away, before all is fulfilled. The Old Testament will incrementally pass away, starting at the cross, and finally all will pass away 40 years later at the fall of Jerusalem. So you are not correct, Jesus, in teaching that one jot or one tittle will by no means pass before then. Now, those who hold the AD 70 view may wish that passages like Matthew 5, verse 18c, and Colossians 2, 14 through 17 were not in existence, but they are. This is adequate reason right here to abandon their view. The above reasoning is all that one needs in order to know that Matthew 5, verse 18c does not mean what AD 70 theology claims it means, namely, that the till all is fulfilled refers to the fall of Jerusalem. A person does not even have to know what this verse does mean in order to know that this is something it does not mean. This passage allows no leeway for an incremental passing away of the Old Testament. Where Jesus says one jot or one tittle will by no means pass, they say some jots and tittles will pass. This being the case, the beloved AD 70 parents should make all adjustments needed in their beliefs so as to harmonize with the truth Jesus Christ states in Matthew chapter 5, verse 18c. Now we're at 2:20, so I have about 10 minutes. And let's see here. Let's take a quick look at another passage, namely Hebrews 10, verses 9 to 10. That's slide number 8. This reads, "Then he said, Behold, I have come to do your will, O God. He takes away the first, that he may establish the second." And verse 10, "By that will we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all." This is difficult to misunderstand. Before Christ established the New Testament, he took away the Old Testament. Now let's go to Romans chapter 7, verses 1 to 4. This is a fairly lengthy passage, and let's see. I have a choice to make. Either I could talk fast, or I could talk about the passage and let you be reading it. And I think I'm going to do the latter. Romans 7, 1 to 4. And somewhat rely upon your memory of the passage. Time being at a premium. Next. Consider a comparison of the AD 70 view in Romans chapter 7, verses 1 to 4. You'll notice in Timothy King's figure that not only does he show the Old Testament gradually going out of existence from the cross to AD 70, and thus illustrating that Jews were under its jurisdiction during that time, but he also has the New Testament simultaneously coming into existence gradually from the cross to AD 70, and thus has people gradually under its jurisdiction during that time. As mentioned, other AD 70 adherents claim that the New Testament gradually came into existence from Pentecost to AD 70, not from the cross. However, either way, they have the Old Testament and New Testament coexisting for 40 years. Now, how does this compare with Romans 7, 1 to 4? I guess I am going to talk fast. I want to get this before us. Or do you not know, brethren, for I speak to those who know the law, that the law has dominion over man as long as he lives. For the woman who has a husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he lives. But if the husband dies, she is released from the law of her husband. So then, if while her husband lives, she marries another man, she will be called an adulteress. But if her husband dies, she is free from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she has married another man. Therefore, verse 4, therefore, my brethren, you also have become dead to the law, through the body of Christ, that you may be married to another, to him who was raised from the dead, that we should bear fruit to God. Unquote. This passage denies that the Old Testament and the New Testament were in effect at the same time. The first husband represents the Old Testament. The second husband represents the New Testament. The woman represents people under the jurisdiction of God's legislation. Her marriage to the first husband represents the Jews who were under the Old Testament. Her marriage to the second husband represents people under the New Testament. The passage is teaching that the first husband, the Old Testament, has died. The Holy Spirit, through Paul, was saying at the time Romans was written, about AD 56, that the brethren in the Church of Christ in Rome were under the New Testament, not the Old Testament. The passage is teaching that if he adhered to the New Testament while the Old Testament was still in effect, he would be committing spiritual adultery. Would you agree with that? Since he now was under the New Testament, the Old Testament, the first husband had died. In this passage, he cannot scripturally be married, that is, being subjected to two husbands, the Old Testament and the New Testament. However, the AD 70 defenders are in conflict with this. They have some of the Old Testament and some of the New Testament in effect at the same time for 40 years. And in response to this, one AD 70 defender said to me that when a Jew was baptized into Christ, he became dead to the law so that he could be married to another. He said this does not mean that the law died for everyone. So he is claiming that a Jew, well after Pentecost, at the writing of Romans about AD 56, is still under the Old Testament, but that when he is baptized, this is what nullifies the Old Testament for him, allowing him to be under the New Testament. Does this fit with the wording of Romans 7:1-4? No. 5 minutes, Brian. No. To be discharged from the husband, the Old Testament, the woman's husband, the Old Testament, had to die first. Notice again, Romans 7:2-4a. For the woman who has a husband is bound by the law to her husband as long as he lives, but if the husband dies, she is released from the law of her husband. So that if, while her husband lives, she marries another man, she will be called an adulteress. But if her husband dies, she is free from the law, from that law, so that she is no adulteress, though she has married another man. Therefore, my brethren, you also have become dead to the law through the body of Christ, that you may be married to another. End quote. Verse 4 teaches that it is the body of Christ, that is his death, that was the means of killing the law, not the baptism of the Jew. Going back to the analogy Paul used, was it the woman's marrying the second husband that nullified her marriage to the first? Or did she have to wait until the first husband died before marrying the second? She had to wait. Death of the old had to precede marrying the second. Because she could be tied, before she could be tied rather to the New Testament, the Old Testament had to die. As the Hebrews writer put it, he takes away the first, that he may establish the second. Hebrews chapter 10, verse 9. We see then that the AD 70 belief system on when the Old Testament ended and the New Testament began violates Scripture, which includes, in this presentation, Matthew 5, verse 18c, Hebrews 10, 9-10, Romans chapter 7, verses 1-4. Thus, AD 70 adherents should abandon such a view. And with concern in our hearts for ourselves, for brethren caught up in this, and for congregations that have split over it, may we all heed the warning from 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 16 regarding the handling of Scripture, which untaught and unstable people twist to their own destruction.